Normally on this channel, I like to cover cases that have been fully adjudicated, both because I want to have a definitive end to the story, but also to avoid potential libel suits. But the case of Tyler Adams is so surreal, it sounds more like the plot of a Hollywood movie than a real case. And since he's still at large, maybe shedding some light on this case might help to get him caught. So let's get into it. Hi folks, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Delaney and I'm a true crime writer and all-around murder nerd. On this channel, I like to take deep dives into cases about the worst kind of people. And I tend to cuss a lot. So if that sounds like your idea of a good time, go ahead and subscribe. If not, that's cool. You do you. So this case is a pretty convoluted one, so settle in. We'll start it off in Tijuana, Mexico, a little less than a year ago, which is when everything came out into the public. On May 31st, 2022, a resident there called the local police about an abandoned car, a white 2008 VW Jetta. It had been on the street for several weeks, but since that's not really out of the ordinary there, no one had thought much of it. Until it started to stink. Like, the stench was so bad, it was making the entire neighborhood sick. When the police arrived, they opened the trunk and found a large red and white cooler inside. Inside the cooler was, you guessed it, the partially decomposed body of a woman. An autopsy would show that her neck had been broken, but there was no ID on her or any other way to identify who she was. So the Mexican police started with the most obvious lead, the car registration. It was registered to a woman named Denise Hosking, who's a U.S. citizen. But Denise was alive and well in her home in Vacaville, California. She told the Mexican police that she had lent the car to her daughter, Racquel Sabean, whom she hadn't heard from in over a month. Now it was looking like the dead woman in the trunk was probably Racquel. Denise and the police had so many questions. Who had killed her? Why was she even in Mexico? And where was her boyfriend, Paul Phillips? But most importantly, where was Valentina, Racquel and Paul's 7-month-old daughter? Once it was confirmed that the body in the trunk of her car was Racquel, Denise officially reported Valentina missing. Fearing for her safety, an Amber Alert was issued for Valentina on June 8, 2022. And since this was a case of an American killed and another possibly kidnapped, the FBI took over the case. And what they uncovered was a string of crimes and identity fraud spanning decades and across multiple states. But let's start with Racquel. When she met Paul in the summer of 2019, she was 37, a Navy veteran, and living in an apartment in San Diego. Even though he was a decade older than her, he was charming and good-looking. Things progressed quickly, and he moved in with her right away. He made a good first impression on Racquel's parents, Denise and David, who are divorced. They said he was really polite, and he told them he was a Mormon and also a Navy veteran like Racquel. But they started seeing some red flags right away. For one, it was obvious that he'd had some work done. Now, Mormons clearly don't have any laws against plastic surgery. In fact, Utah, the epicenter of Mormonism, is kind of obsessed with plastic surgery. There are 6 plastic surgeons for every 100,000 residents in the state, and Salt Lake City has 2.5 times more plastic surgeons than any other city its size. But regardless of how Mormons view cosmetic surgery, David saw it as a red flag that Paul was, in his words, a phony. Add to that the fact that when Paul and Racquel first met, he had blonde hair, but then he started dyeing it black. That started her father squinting. Then, one day when they were all at the beach, Paul took off his shirt and David noticed that he had a tattoo on his left arm. Now, more recently, the Church of Latter-day Saints has relaxed their stance on tattoos, but for years it used to be forbidden. So now David was starting to have serious doubts about Paul's supposed Mormon faith. Then there was also his odd behavior of rarely going outside during the day. And David said that he and Racquel always had multiple phones and frequently changed them out, like you do with burner phones. Not long after the two moved in together, Racquel got pregnant. During that time, she confided to her dad that Paul might be all sweet and polite to her while her father was around, but when they were alone, it was a different story. David said he encouraged her to leave Paul, but said Racquel told him, "Don't worry, I can handle it." Her mother, Denise, said that Racquel had confided in her too, saying that the two of them had been fighting a lot and that she didn't want to stay with him anymore. But then in November of 2022, Valentina was born. Racquel's parents said that Paul was over the moon. Denise said if you saw him with that baby, he was like no man I've ever seen. He was usually the one holding that baby. He would feed her. He would do everything. Here's a home video of them that was taken when Valentina was just 5 days old.
Oh, look at that. Good job, Racquel. Beauty. Good job, Racquel. You truly take care of your baby. Beautiful, Valentina.
She looks like a little peppermint candy.
Yeah, she looks like a beautiful peppermint candy, honey.
And does this strike anyone else as really weird? Like the way he's talking to her, like she's the child? Anyway, Racquel posted to Facebook on April 16th, 2022. And that's the last time anyone would hear from her. The next day, surveillance footage at the Tijuana border showed Denise's Jetta crossing into Mexico. Unfortunately, you can't see who the driver is, but neither of Racquel's parents believe that she drove the car or that she was a willing passenger. Denise had forbidden her to drive it into Mexico because it didn't have Mexican auto insurance, and Racquel had sworn to her that she wouldn't. Later, David said he watched surveillance footage that showed Paul parking the Jetta at that spot where it was abandoned, then getting out and walking away. Only 4 days after the Amber Alert was issued, on June 12th, Paul sent Racquel's parents a short video of Valentina, which did help set their minds at ease somewhat. And it also helped police find her. 3 days later, on June 15th, Mexican authorities found Valentina in the care of a woman in Rosarito. The woman had been babysitting for Paul and had no idea Valentina was a missing person. She wasn't suspected or charged with anything. That same day, Paul was detained by the Mexican authorities and questioned about Racquel's murder. But he was, as they put it, uncooperative. Arrangements were made to transfer him to the FBI at the border. And as you can probably tell from his mugshot, it looks like he got a little discount filler while he was down there. You get what you pay for. But this is not where the story ends. Far from it. The very next day, June 16th, Mexican authorities transported Paul to the San Isidro border crossing and handed him over to an American Customs and Border Patrol official. Now, it's not clear exactly what happened, bribery, but he was apparently given his keys, cash, his fake ID with the name Aaron Bain, and allowed to just walk away. Turns out, this was not the first time he was able to just walk away from being in custody, but more on that in a minute. So the next day, the FBI put out a news release asking the public's help in finding the fugitive, who is still wanted for questioning in Racquel's murder. But the name the FBI knows him as is not Paul Phillips or Aaron Bain. It's Tyler Adams, which is also just another one of dozens of aliases this master of disguise has used. Because it turns out Paul Phillips has a long history of criming. The man the FBI is looking for was born Kevin Schoolcraft. He grew up in Pennsylvania, and when he was a teenager, he had the first of what would be many cosmetic procedures. After high school, he served in the Navy, and after he finished his time there, he moved to California and changed his name to Tyler Adams, supposedly because he was so close to his grandmother, whose last name was Adams. Anyway, he bought a house in Temecula and started telling people he worked in real estate. In 2006, Tyler talked his stepfather, Donald Chafee, into letting him borrow his good credit rating so he could buy some property in San Diego's North County. He told his stepdad that he had plenty of money, but he needed Donald's good credit to close a real estate deal. Donald would later testify that he, Tyler, was always trying to make deals. But Tyler said he also needed Donald's power of attorney and his social security number to make this big real estate deal happen. And Donald just gave it to him. Tyler then opened credit lines using his mom and stepdad's identities to buy clothes, computers, and just basically cover day-to-day expenses. He forged their signatures and took out loans to buy 5 expensive condos, 3 in downtown San Diego, 1 in La Jolla, and 1 in Rancho Santa Fe. Tyler collected more than $180,000 in commissions on those deals because he was acting as both the loan officer and the real estate agent. He was also renting out some of the properties and just keeping the money. But he never made payments on those loans. So, of course, he went into default. Or rather, Donald Chafee went into default. Needless to say, Donald started getting all these notices and bills and knew something was fishy. So in 2007, Donald contacted the authorities in California to try and stop the fraudulent use of his identity. Around that same time, coincidentally, Tyler fled to Hawaii and started using the name Kevin Kennedy and Lance Irwin and Michael Whitman, among others. He started saying he was a student at the University of Hawaii Law School. And he got right back to work, creating 4 fictitious businesses and a fake charity, and he opened accounts for them at 2 separate banks. He then used fake checks to deposit large amounts of money into the accounts, then convinced the banks to make the funds immediately available to withdraw. In other words, a check kiting scheme. Also, he stole a $5,000 diamond ring from Costco, because why not? In 2009, a grand jury in Oahu indicted him for stealing $130,000 from the banks. But he was already gone. In 2008, he moved back to California. So Hawaii was going to have to get in line to prosecute this dude. Investigators in San Diego County got an arrest warrant for Tyler Adams in July 2009. After 4 months of searching for him, they finally caught him moving his shit out of a property in La Jolla and took him into custody. He was charged with over $3 million worth of fraud, felony identity theft, forgery, and other charges, 48 in all. But he dragged the case on for years by dismissing his defense attorneys and acting mentally ill in order to get declared incompetent to stand trial. Sound like someone else we know? But his bullshit delay tactics could only work for so long. In 2012, on the day the trial was supposed to start, he finally backed down and pled guilty. He was sentenced to 14 years. The following year, 2013, he pled no contest to the charges against him in Hawaii. Those convictions carried a mandatory 10-year sentence, but he would have to serve his time in California first. While he was still in prison in California, he filed a complaint claiming that 2 other inmates beat him up and dislodged his cheek and chin implants and damaged whatever it was he had done to his nose. That complaint was dismissed. So, after Tyler served the mandatory minimum of 7 years in California, he was extradited back to Hawaii to serve his sentence for that fraud. Apparently, very soon after arriving at the Hawaiian prison, he was granted a work release deal. In late May of 2019, he left for his normal work assignment and just never returned. He's still wanted by Hawaiian authorities and is facing an additional charge of second-degree escape. We now know that right after that escape, he somehow made it back to the mainland, where soon afterwards he met Racquel Sabean and moved in with her. So after walking away from the San Isidro border crossing in June of last year, Tyler Adams / Aaron Bain / Paul Phillips has been on the loose ever since. The FBI has asked the public to be on the lookout for him, describing him as a white male, 50 years old, 5 feet 9 inches tall, and about 175 pounds. Of course, he's had a lot of plastic surgery done and has changed his appearance in a lot of other ways over the years too. So hair color and such could be anything. If you have any information that can help find him, call 1-800-CALL-FBI or go to tips.fbi.gov. So, what are your thoughts about this case? Had you heard about it before? Let me know in the comments. Till next time, Darklings. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more. You can help me make more true crime content by supporting me on Patreon, where for as little as a cup of coffee, you can get early access to videos, bonus content, and free Murder Nerd merch. The link is in the description.